Hey everyone, welcome to the Learning to Birth webinar series where we interview some of the world's most interesting and inspiring thought leaders in birth and pregnancy worldwide. Today we have with us Shari Romero. Welcome, Shari.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we all are. Everyone, Shari's got such an exciting background that hopefully she's going to share with us all later in our conversation. But just to give a little introduction, Shari is a certified nurse midwife, and Shari offers empowering pregnancy, birth, and women's health care. She specializes in guiding clients toward a joyful journey and finding happiness and balance through the transition to motherhood. That's a pretty powerful statement there. That's beautiful. How did you come to be offering all of this?
Well, I became a nurse midwife in 1995. I became a nurse in 1990, but I became a mother in 1982 when I was a teenager. And I can remember so clearly when I went to my prenatal visits that I was so afraid. I didn't feel good about going for my visits. I felt like I was going to be punished. I felt they were sort of punitive. I was worried. I was worried that my blood pressure would be off, or that my weight would be too much or too little, that I would have done something wrong. Of course, I was a teenage mom. I didn't have a lot of education about it. But I didn't feel like it was happy. I felt like it was a scary process. And then, of course, 1982, having my first baby, that particular exciting experience was not very cathartic for me. It was scary. It was ruled by the hospital system. And I had many interventions done that were not necessary and were not really in my best interest. People there were not really excited for me to have a baby. They were just sort of pushing me through. And I still, I had routine things done like an IV and an enema and shave. And I went to the operating room to have a normal vaginal birth. I had a routine episiotomy, etc. What came out of that, though, was the most magical endorphins that I ever could feel in my life. I always said I never wanted a redheaded baby. I had a teenage sister that I didn't like all that much. I love her now, but yeah. But this amazing redheaded boy came out, and I saw him. And even though I had had this sort of traumatic experience, things that happened to me that I didn't even know was going to happen, I could not believe I had accomplished the thing that I had done. And I felt this immediately rush of unconditional love that was crazy empowering. And I felt like I could climb mountains. I could fly through the sky. I wanted so badly to see, what could be done differently. 20 months later, I had another baby, and sort of the same sort of type of situation, because I hadn't really empowered myself too much. My oldest son, by the way, had a liver disease that was considered terminal at the time. And that's how I became a nurse, was actually living with my son in a pediatric research unit in Denver, Colorado, at the University of Colorado Medical Center. He was given a diagnosis that he was not supposed to live past the age of 2. I was introduced to nursing that way, and I didn't know that I was smart enough or knew enough really to do anything in the medical field. But when you're faced with the task of learning how to raise your son or take care of your son, I rose to the occasion like any mother does. We're told something about our child or about our pregnancy, and we sort of walk into the situation and said, you know what, I'm going to do what it takes. And I did. And so I learned all about taking care of my child and about becoming a nurse that way. In the course of that, my son actually also rose to the occasion, and he eventually got a liver transplant, and he is 36 years old now, and
Wow.
has two little redheaded boys of his own. But I found that I could be smart enough and I could do enough to become a nurse. And I figured out that those kind of birthing experiences could be changed and could be empowering women through the nursing profession and through something called a certified nurse midwife. So I decided that a woman's birth journey should not be scary. It should not be disempowering. It should not be something that we should be dreading. It is our birthright to be joyful. It should be something that we should be looking forward to. And when my clients come in to have their prenatal experience, it's something that they are excited about. When they walk in, it's not punitive. It's a beautiful, exciting, and happy friendship and partnership where they truly are the ones in charge of their own birth experience. I give them the evidence all around what is possibly going to be the best choices that they get to make for their own experience and their own family and baby. We're not trying to punish anybody, but we're trying to make the best options and the best choices available so that they can choose and really truly manifest the pregnancy and birth of their desires. So that's a long answer to your very short question. Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
So
I'm riveted. I'm riveted. I'm like, this needs to be a Hollywood movie. It needs to be a movie about you.
Yes. Well, you know, I feel like women come to birth, come to pregnancy, come to their journey through womanhood, or through whatever gender they happen to be with their own stories. You know, I have my own story. And, you know, my mother had her story and her mother around birth and around that language. When we choose language that empowers women and that we choose language that explains to women that we're having an experience. I'm just a spiritual being having an earthly experience. Mm-hmm. And I am the conduit. I'm the vessel that's bringing new life to this world. Yeah. That should be an honor. It should be a privilege. And it should be something that I am cherished for. I am not having a section. I'm not having a C-section. I'm not getting cut. I'm having perhaps a belly birth. Perhaps I need to have a cesarean birth experience. When I change the language around that, then women can see that that can be exactly what they needed and empower their story that way. That they can see that that is perhaps not at all their fault, that that was the journey that was meant to happen. Mm-hmm. I empower women through VBAC stories, through vaginal birth after cesarean birth, and see that that perhaps was something that happened for them and not to them. And they can see that that is exactly what needed to happen in that moment in time. When we change the language around birth, where we're not saying things like, did they let you, or I'm going to allow you, or let you, or something like that, we don't let people or allow them. We offer them, and they choose for themselves. This isn't some sort of hierarchical measure that people get to fit in at the bottom when they are truly a consumer of healthcare. If you go into that setting and you're buying healthcare, then truly you are the boss. You're the one that should be making this decision. Why? In fact,
right. You're the customer. Yes. You get to choose. Customer is always right.
That's right. That's right. Why would you ever sit back and say, well, my doctor or my midwife or my whoever is taking care of me told me that I can, or is letting me, or is making me, or said I have to? Those are ridiculous languages that we use to belittle women into forcing them into something that we want to do. Now, I would like to say, as you know, as the advocate for hospital practices and obstetricians that I love so much, and perinatologists, that when a woman walks into the setting with so much fear and anxiety around the birth of their baby because we're afraid of loss, that it's true that that particular provider could be, you know, feeling a litigious sort of also fear, and the woman is turning their power over to that person because they want the perfect outcome. Mm-hmm. You can, in fact, do every single thing right. You can honor your body. You know, you're eating well, you are moving your body purposefully, you're not doing drugs, you know, you're not smoking the dope, you're not drinking alcohol, you're staying away from things that are dangerous. You can do all of those things well, and you can do, you know, you can nourish the baby with good thoughts and mindfulness practices. You can nurture the spirit every day. You can do meditations and manifestations. You can do all of those right things, and then you still have to sort of turn it over the best you can, because you cannot control every single thing. There are some things that are beyond our control, right? So you cannot force someone in the setting to say, here, I'm going to give you this power, and you have to give me a perfect outcome, and not expect that person to say, you know, we've done all this research and you could in fact have some risk factor. And so in order to avoid any kind of negative outcome, we should intervene. You know, when you turn that power over to them and say, I want the perfect outcome, then you can't blame them for wanting to intervene. What you could say is that I'd like to hear the evidence surrounding that. I understand I'm doing all the right things, the best that I can, and I understand that you cannot control every outcome. Therefore, I'm going to partner with you to the best of my ability, and I'm going to trust you as my partner that we're going to do the best things that we can together. And then you're going to have to let it go. So that's what I work a lot with on the women in my practice is we do things on fear release. We do things on changing the language. You know, we say things like, instead of the mom coming in and say, well, what if something bad happens? What if something untoward happens? And, you know, then we talk about the statistics of that terrible thing that could possibly happen. And then we also break it down to, well, what if everything goes right?
Yeah.
Which, you know, 90+% of the time it does when you are doing every single thing that you can to do the next right thing. You know, we can avoid every single terrible thing that possibly could happen. However, the vast majority of the time it doesn't. There are certain risk factors that could happen along the way. You know, you could have gestational diabetes or you could have preeclampsia, and that's where those evidence-based things come in, and where that provider who is in the higher level of setting says, here's the evidence around that, perhaps we should intervene. And that's when you're partnering with that person and you say, I hear what you're saying, I understand that intervention, and I'm going to agree to that because I believe you're doing the best intervention for me. But when you're a low risk mom, and when you're a mom who doesn't have any of those kinds of risk factors, you say, I believe that I'm doing the best right things for my baby and for my body. And so therefore I'd like to wait. I'd like to go ahead and go through the motions of everything that I'm doing well right now. And I'd like to use the language of, what if everything goes right? I believe everything's going right. That's why you write out those affirmations. That's why you listen to the meditations. That's why you move through every single part of your pregnancy with a joyful and happy attitude.
That's just beautiful. I mean, I'm speechless. Like, first of all, any Hollywood movie directors listening, please get in touch with Shari. And secondly, you know, it's like, you know, we could just go back to like that book by Marianne Williamson. You know, I forget what the name of the book is, but you know, like she says in it that, you know, there's only two ways to choose your life. You can live through love, or you can live through fear. And every moment, every choice, you're either choosing love or fear. And what you're talking about very, very strongly is about, you know, choosing love rather than the fear. And I mean, that was the big difference between my first birth and my second birth. I learned to choose love, not fear. And that's why I'm doing this webinar series today. And the beautiful thing is like the name of like your practice is Peace, Love, and Shari, and you've actually got love in your title there. Do you want to tell us like how that name came about?
Sure. So much of my practice and what I've done, you know, I was a hospital midwife for a long time. I worked in the inner city. I did a National Health Service Corps stint. I worked with a lot of teenagers, a lot of babies, a lot of women who had risk factors that actually they didn't even know they needed a midwife. And I love that aspect of midwifery care. Then I also went into private practice and I took care of women who wanted a midwife, but maybe because they wanted a high touch, lower tech type of birth, but perhaps didn't have the same resource problem, but they had sort of an inner work problem. And then I took a break from midwifery for a while and did some recovery work of my own. Everybody, like I said, has a story, has a history. And I find that the more that you work with women, it doesn't matter what the level of story is or the level of trauma is. It could be something from the fact that, you know, maybe you had a weight issue your whole life, or maybe you've had a history of violence. sexual assault, or maybe it's domestic violence, or maybe it's simply that you've always been, you've had history of food addiction or something like that. And when we bring those kinds of worries and stories to the table, then it affects the way that we transition through our womanhood and our birth, through our pregnancy, our birth, even our postpartum period, our menopause. And yeah, thank the Lord I've caught the menopause. I'm so glad about that. I'm loving this time of my life. So when I decided to sort of have this separate place that I wanted to reach out to women, I was thinking of a name, and a lot of my story and history has to do with violence, with a history in my childhood of sexual violence, of a history later in life of addiction, a history where I had to sit back and really work on me and go through some recovery steps and figure out that I truly was good enough and that I didn't need to drag my story around with me all the time, and that truly wasn't who I was. The person that I am, is the person that's looking at you today saying, I know where people have been. I know where I have been, but I know that that does not have to define who I am today, where I'm going today, or really have anything to do with the value of my person, or who, or how much I'm worth. I am worthy simply because I am sitting here, and because I am breathing, and because I am a child of the universe. And my mission and my story is all about taking that breath and feeling peace within my soul and within my mind. And that if I look at every single person, whether that person has loved me my whole life unconditionally, or whether that person has been awful to me or has made me feel less than, I look at that person and reframe it through a lens of love, let go of any judgment that I had, then I can truly change the course of my life. And I can make my own life a living legend and a testimony for anyone who has ever felt like they couldn't make it, or like they didn't have exactly what they needed to go the length. And so I have 4 beautiful children today, 3 beautiful grandchildren, a loving husband, and I have a practice that I can be proud of. And I feel like it comes down to those basic things where I'm peaceful in my soul, where I can look at every single thing through a lens of love. And I can just say, you know what, Shari lives here today because she feels like she is exactly who she needs to be. And that I'm reaching out to women as a nurse midwife, as a mother, as a woman, as a grandmother, as a person who has been through some of the hardest things that you could ever imagine. And really, truly, I'm okay with that. I feel like every single detour in my life was a detour in the right direction. Every single thing that has happened for me and not to me. And it really has truly made the trajectory of my life to be exactly what I needed to be, so that other women, other families, other people could benefit from that. So whether, I was handed several thousand births, it's not even really about the moment of birth. It's about the whole journey. As you know, that moment of birth passes so quickly, and we love it. Who doesn't love to catch babies? Most of the time, daddies catch the baby anyway, the partners catch the baby. I love that moment of birth. I love seeing that, but honestly, it's really about the whole thing. It's about that first time you meet that mom and you say, are you so excited for your birth journey? Are you so excited for the celebration that's coming? And she says, well, I'm a little afraid. And I'm saying, I understand that. I was afraid too. But let me help you be joyful in that. Let me help you rejoice in how it's coming. You know what? Let's be peaceful in it. And let's every morning say a mantra that's going to bless your soul and help you connect to that beautiful spirit that's growing. I'm excited. I'm excited for the women that are coming through and that are changing the way that they're birthing, and then they're changing the next generation of women who are birthing. Yes.
Oh, that's just beautiful, Shari. There's just so much in there. It really resonates with something that I've come to, I embraced in my own life, and that was that you are not your story. The story is something that happened to you, and often it's something that someone else does to you. But your story is the story you create for yourself, not the story someone else gave to you. And you can give that story back. And maybe your life might be about helping others heal a story in them that was similar to what happened to you. Or maybe your life is just about just going, no, I'm totally in charge of my destiny. I'm going there. That's where I was always going. And we get, we might be a cup and we pour the story in, but we can, whatever story we pour into our cup, that's ours, and we get to choose it. It's just a story. It's our reality. We can, make that our own. Send ourselves in our own direction. So it's beautiful that you're giving that gift to mothers who come to you. Like at the moment, like how do mums come to you? Do you birth with them at home or in a birth center?
Well, I was a hospital midwife for years. And then a few years ago, I decided to go back and get my doctorate of nursing practice. And I decided to do that in a birth center setting or an out of hospital setting. I was that midwife who was accepting out of hospital transfers. And I could see that sometimes people were really hesitant to make that phone call, that there was always sort of this hierarchical feeling, and the home birth or the birth center midwife might be a little hesitant to make the telephone call, that people were worried that they were going to get judged, or that the client in the out of hospital setting would be worried about that maybe their needs wouldn't be met, or that they would be judged. And so I did a study through the Institute of Health that changed the language. It's all about language, right? Doing the transfer. And so I used an SBAR tool that took away a lot of the extraneous information and invited people to use the pertinent information to make that transfer a little faster, to make it a little more congruent with hospital language, so that people were understanding more. And so that particular study did really well that year. And I found, however, not only did I get my doctorate, but I found actually that women were really more empowered out of hospital. They seemed to be a lot safer. They were a lot more satisfied. The community of birth workers seemed to be just a whole lot more relaxed. And I could see evidence in the making. I could see all the things that, that were based around evidence that were lacking the fear. About like intermittent auscultation of the fetal heart rate. That's one of the best evidence-based protocols that we could actually use. And then what else the other thing that happened was that I found that I was actually more true to my calling. And I could see these moms having their babies coming in, they didn't have an IV, they didn't have continuous fetal monitoring, they were walking around, we were inviting them, their birth plan didn't have anything to do with fighting for their rights. They didn't have to ask for things in their birth plan, that they were doing that in the hospital. They were doing things like, asking for, what do I want to eat? What do I want to drink? What aromatherapy do I want?
Yeah.
Am I going to have a birth photographer? One of my best friends is a beautiful, world-renowned birth photographer, and I'm using a lot of birth photography to help women process their story and see themselves in a new light. So I just was, and so I stayed out of hospital. Of course, I couldn't walk back in the door. And so I was a clinical director and certified nurse midwife of a freestanding birth center. Wow. I just left there. I did a couple hundred births there. I've done a few thousand births in my career. And I am working on setting up a home birth practice. And I want to do that. I'm in the last maybe 15, 20 years of my career. And so I'm thinking that I want to start doing that. And also just working on this sort of coaching practice where I'm walking with women through the mindset of how do I make it through when I've had some terrible trauma. So they can come to me. A lot of women just know me through social media. I'm working on some online programs. And also, they just know me through social gatherings and through the birth community here in Colorado.
That's phenomenal. I'm so glad that you're, taking that career path that's true for you. That's gorgeous. What city are you in case anyone's listening who's near you and wants help?
Sure. I'm in the Denver metro area. I'm in a small little town called, well, it's not really that small. It's Highlands Ranch, Colorado, but it's just right outside of Denver.
Okay, Denver, Colorado. Anyone listening
Yes.
in future who's like just looking for their perfect midwife, you found it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, that's beautiful. Look, I mean, you do have a lot of experience in birth centers, and a lot of for mums who are maybe listening to this who haven't heard before, do you want to maybe explain the difference in general between what a hospital birth might look like compared to a birth center birth? Like, why would someone choose a birth center?
Sure. Well, the hospital birth is the place where the vast majority of women have their babies. And hospital birth is a very safe place for most women to have their babies. However, especially when they have any sort of risk factor. But there are certain policies and protocols that are in place that are there because it is a hospital setting. Things like oftentimes continuous fetal monitoring, IVs, or at least saline locks. Um, Sometimes they have rules where you cannot eat or drink. Oftentimes they have rules about what positions that you may have to birth in, or that you're not allowed to have your baby in the water. They do have options, however, for pain control that are not available out of hospital, like narcotics or epidural anesthesia. They also have operating rooms right there and available for things like cesarean or belly births. An out of hospital birth in the birth center setting would offer you a community of birth workers like certified nurse midwife. Some states would allow a certified professional midwife to attend you, but usually it's a nurse midwife, and also registered nurses and sometimes doulas that are in one place where the mother would come into this building or to this setting, and they would offer a low intervention type of birth, like intermittent auscultation. A lot of times you can eat, you can drink, you can use aromatherapy, you can use acupuncture, acupressure, you can have your baby in water. The biggest worry that you have is like what I said earlier is what do I want to smell, what do I want to eat, and who's going to catch the baby. You can have your baby pretty much in any position, squatting, rocking, hanging from the yoga sling, those kinds of fun things like that. They do have many options for pain relief. However, narcotics and epidural is not one of them. And they have to, because they don't have that operating room setting, and they don't have or don't utilize medications like insulin, or they don't have things for available for higher levels of neonatal care. You could not or should not have your baby in those settings if you have certain risk factors. So like twins are not typically allowed to have their baby there, or women with preeclampsia that would need like magnesium sulfate, or diabetics who would need insulin. And it's, not only for the mom, but also for the neonate. So those particular moms should have their baby in a higher level of care. The home birth setting, the midwife is bringing many of those alternatives and safety measures. And in the birth center setting, by the way, they do have safety things. They have like ambu bags, and they have postpartum hemorrhage medications and things like that for emergent type of things. And they usually have protocols set up for emergent situations for transfer. But they also offer, and they typically have lower cesarean birth rates, they have lower episiotomy rates, they have higher patient or client satisfaction. They're not patients, they're not ill, they're healthy moms. Those kinds of wonderful things are available in the birth center setting, so that moms feel very safe, because everybody is certified in basic cardiac life support, and they're certified in the neonatal resuscitation protocols, etc. In the home birth setting, those midwives are bringing those drugs with them. They're bringing oxygen with them. They're bringing the neonatal equipment with them. But you're allowed to do this all in your own home environment. And then they too often should have the transfer protocols in place should there be an emergent situation rise up, and they should be bringing someone with them for assistance in case if there's emergent. there's an emergency come up.
So yeah, that's a really good explanation. Both my births aspired to being, hopefully in a birth center, but where I lived, it was a capital city. There was only one birth center. You had to go through the public sector, and you basically had to book in even before you knew you were pregnant. There was no way otherwise of getting into this one birth center that looked after a million odd people population wise. So it seems like it's a really a beautiful option if you do feel like you still need that more formal setting, and you've got one near you that you can get into. What would it like? Obviously, when you're at home, you've got everything there. But if you are planning a birth in a birth center or maybe a hospital, what's the ideal birth bag kind of look like? What should you take with you?
It would just depend on what you want. I mean, in the birth center setting, oftentimes people will bring a lot of things and they don't tend to use everything or, use much of anything. I always told my moms, bring a car seat, an outfit for the baby. And we typically had most everything else. But moms would bring their own specialized little affirmation cards. Sometimes they would bring, I always say, do you have your playlist? Because we had speakers and they would bring their playlists that they had. And that could be anything from the hypnobirthing lady, talking to them. And sometimes they'd fall asleep in the tub as they listened to the hypnobirthing lady. Sometimes it was some sort of like AC/DC rock band, depending on the mom and what her comfort level is. Sometimes it was something very spiritual. Sometimes they would bring a particular food item that they really loved. But, we often had the birth center would often have snacks and things that we know are quick protein and quick carbs. We would have things for them to drink and eat. We don't typically have them wear anything in particular. So if they just wanted to bring whatever was comfortable for them, then that would be fine. They could we had aromatherapies available. We had diffusers available. We had speakers available. So a lot of those things were already there. Sometimes we'd have dads bring their little shorts or swimming trunks so that if they want to get in the water with them, they could.
Swimming trunks, definitely important.
Yes.
Let's remember the swimming trunks. No jeans in the birth pool. No,
no jeans and no naked daddies. Now they could be naked at home. I mean, and the naked doesn't bother me, but it might bother someone else. I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
Those things. It would just be personal like things, or maybe they want to bring a picture of their dog or their other kids or something like that, something to make things personal. Sometimes we have people bring in like string lights around the room and make it a magical experience. And especially if they were bringing in their birth photographer and they were doing a videography, they would bring some beautiful lighted things or whatever to make it just a magical experience. And other times there'd be people who barely made it in the door and, the baby's crowning and there you go. Yes. Yeah. So that'd be fine too. We could do that too.
Yeah. Talk to me about birth photography. It was never really in my budget. And it's something I kind of really regret. I would have loved, particularly at my daughter's birth, which was, in a water pool. Everything was awesome. Only took, a few minutes and everything really. I just would have loved that. It was such an empowering birth, but it wasn't on my financial radar at the time. How does a woman approach whether or not she wants photography and how to get one?
Right. Well, they're a lot more popular now than, of course, my kids are 36, 35, 27, and 17. That was not a thing when I had my kids. And I wish so badly that it were, because I would have loved to see my own beautiful power and how I approached birth and how young I was. And I had no idea how strong I was. And I wish I could have seen that. I talk a lot to women who are trying to reframe how they are viewing themselves in birth. And sometimes they're like, oh, I don't want to see myself in that vulnerable state. And what I feel like birth photography is doing for women right now, it's not capturing a picture. It's capturing a moment. It's capturing a memory. It's capturing a view of an instant where a woman is the most powerful, most gorgeous, most most vulnerable moment that she can ever be, and she should see her raw beauty in that. And I've seen women so beautifully been able to process some of the moments that they really did not know that they were doing something so incredible. And you know, as far as the finances of it, there are some, you know, photographers. One, like I said, one of my best friends is a photographer here in Denver, and she has a Dove commercial out right now. I tease her all the time because some of the births that she attended with me are in this commercial.
Oh, wow.
I know. It's really quite incredible. The work that she's done has really helped so many women go through their birth experience and say, wow, I don't remember that. I didn't even know that he was loving me like that, or he was touching me like that. I didn't remember the baby, or didn't even realize that, you know, my back was hurting like that. I didn't realize that the baby was coming out with the face up. And I didn't even know that my hand was touching my baby that way. You know, a lot of times I'll have, if the mom wants to, have her birth the baby into her own hand. And she'll say, I remember feeling the baby's head, but I didn't realize that I was the first person to touch my baby. So as they're seeing those moments and they're reframing it, you know, it's not necessarily that they're going to be publishing those moments, that they're going to be, although they could if they wanted to, that they're going to be sending them out there in that social network, but they may be just taking those pictures, and sometimes they'll do a video, and they're going to be showing themselves their own powerful journey. I feel like it's one of the best ways that you can review what the incredible things that your body can do, that incredible emotions, the rawness of what we do when we are transitioning to motherhood, and also the way that our family, our friends, our birth workers are responding around us. Sometimes we have no idea what the birth workers are experiencing when we are giving birth. If we look back, and every now, Monet and Nicole Moutry is the person who I was talking about. Her and her partner, Rebecca Walsh, have done some amazing work. Every now and then they'll get a picture of us as birth workers, and these ladies will see our faces that are just awash with emotion, because we're watching someone that we've been loving for, you know, 7 or 8 months do this incredible thing that they were afraid to do.
Yeah.
And we are loving them, and we are finding them to be just this beautiful mama who needed it so badly. So I treasure those pictures myself, you know, and I look back and I think, I know that you've seen some of those because I sent you a few examples in that zip file, but and I have hundreds of pictures, but I look back at those and I'm like, oh my, you know, do you see what a powerful, beautiful birthing goddess you were? And they're like, Shari, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could do that. Look at me. I look so beautiful. Look what I'm going to be showing my daughter, my son, my husband, my mom. My mom didn't know I could do that. My mom told me I should go to the hospital, but now look, and she's looking at this and she believes I'm so strong. I believe I'm so strong. And I always tell them, I knew you could do it. Look at you. You're so strong.
Wow. I'm getting tingles. Because, you know, it's so changed in the last few years. I mean, I think probably with, you're allowed to show these things now. The social media places don't delete them so much or shut you down. You just go to Instagram now and follow the feeds of, you know, the midwives, you know, who are out there like yourselves, you know, in the trenches, really, you know, leading the birth movement and, or the normalized birth movement. And just the photos that are going up there, and you see those women in that moment I won't necessarily call it ecstatic because it's very intense and not all these women are ecstatic, but they are themselves, you know, they are that fiery goddess being. And when you've been that through birth and you suddenly go, oh my God, if I could be that, then I can be that anytime, you know, and
Yes.
you end up leading a beautiful life where you bring that out into everything you do. Yeah. Oh, it's so lovely talking to you. Would you like to share with us, like, what you do, like how people can connect with you, how can they can, you know, follow you, be coached by you? You know, how can people?
Sure. Sure. If they go to Facebook, I have a website, and it's a little under construction right now because we're starting a new online program.
Yeah.
And it's literally, it's Peace, Love, and Shari. It's peaceloveshari.com, and it will be up in about a couple of days. But if they just go to Facebook and look up Peace, Love, and Shari, it's right there. And they can message me there. They can friend me on Facebook, and I'm happy to connect. The women who come in and see me, or who talk to me and who connect with me, are sometimes looking for a birth worker. They're looking for a midwife to attend them. A lot of times what they're looking for is someone to talk to, someone to work with, to be able to go through their history and say, Shari, what was wrong with me? Why did this happen to me? What is it that I did wrong in my birth, or in my past, or in my history, that I was not able to birth my baby vaginally, or I was not able to protect myself, or why I was not able to complete my, journey. They've had a history of miscarriage or loss. I've had a same history that, 1 out of 4 women, and probably more, do. So much of what we know is that women need to tell their story. We know that new moms need to tell their birth story like 100 times in the first 6 weeks. And I encourage them to do that. So often when we just say it, when we're able to just talk about it, it just relieves the burden of it. Even if it's a happy story, we need to talk about it, because sometimes it's not, women so often do really, really well when they're feeling really high, or sometimes they're pretty good when they're feeling low. It's when we feel right in the norm that we're like, what now? What do we do? There's not another class to take. There's not another, what do we do when we're just having life day to day? I often am working with women in figuring out, how is it that I manage my story, learn to put it in that cup. And by the way, my cup is running over.
Yeah, all Mary Magdalene's here. We are.
Yes. Woo, yeah.
Yeah.
And map out a life that is a happy and joyous one, and teach our children to not live in fear, to wake up every day. And it doesn't mean that we aren't going to have fear, but be able to work our way through it. We can do that through so many ways. I teach emotional freedom technique. I don't know if you've ever heard of tapping.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. We do tapping, we do meditations, we do just talk therapy, we do journaling. There's a lot of different ways to go through that. And, a lot of our prenatal visits are about that. Yes, we listen to the baby. Yes, we talk about the things that are coming up in pregnancy, but we also say, hey, how's it going? How's the job? How are you feeling? Your weight is the smallest issue.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Your weight and your blood pressure, yeah, let's write those down and say, okay, and how's it going? Yeah. I used to ask my ladies earlier in my career, the ladies who are living on the street, and see, are you having access to food? Those kinds of things. The ladies that I'm seeing now don't typically have that problem, but I'm asking, tell me what foods feel good to you. What's completing your heart and your soul and your tummy? What's in there that's making you feel good, Yeah, and sometimes it's ice cream, and sometimes it's, I just really want a salad today. And tell me what it is about that. Food is not love, but it feels like it sometimes, right? So there's so much that goes along with being a mama, being a pregnant person, being a woman, being a family, and we just delve into all of that. I love just being a part of somebody's journey, a happy
Oh.
journey.
It's just so important to know, having been through a similar journey like what you're describing, like that no matter what happened, you're not to blame. It wasn't your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just about learning our power. It's not about what I did wrong. It's about, oh, I'm more powerful than that. I didn't even know it. I know that now. I can go and be powerful.
Right.
It starts here. It starts now. And it's, we are worthy. We are so much more worthy than we ever realize we are. And just, becoming a mother, I think, to a great extent, and having these experiences, sometimes they haven't been so great. It's about realizing, wow, I am more worthy than that, and I didn't even know. And I get to go forward in life going, I'm worthy, and, sending that out there, and just only accepting the worthy things. Sorry, you're not worthy enough for me, bye-bye, whatever.
Right.
And it's beautiful. It's been beautiful speaking to you. Everyone listening to this, Shari's website is definitely up. Okay, it's up by the time you are listening to this website. We'll make sure the links are there. Do you want to talk to us at all about, oxytocin? And I mean, you're talking about how we can make those good feelings flow, but do you want to talk at all about oxytocin, what a mummy can do to, boost that oxytocin for herself as she comes up to, give birth and everything?
Sure. In the birth center setting, we don't induce labor with artificial things like Pitocin or Cytotec or anything like that. And sometimes we talk about some of the more natural induction methods, like using maybe primrose oil to soften the cervix, or eating dates, or pineapple and things like that. But what I used to tell, or what I tell my moms a lot of times, is the thing that would get you closer to birthing your baby than anything else is looking at your partner. It's not even about intercourse. I mean, intercourse and sperm deposits and things like that does soften the cervix, right? Yes. There's a prostaglandin component to sperm, etc. Yeah. But it's when you sit across from that person, your partner that you love so much, and you get that ooey gooey feeling, that thing that ignites that fire within your solar plexus that says, yeah, that's the thing that gets me all excited and happy. That's the thing that starts triggering that oxytocin, that love hormone, that hormone that when we have an orgasm, those are the things that are going to set off the receptor sites that are going to get you excited about having your baby. That's the same thing that happens when we stimulate the nipple. Which is why when mothers are breastfeeding, they start contracting, right? And sometimes they even have that same sort of solar plexus type of feeling within their pelvis. So getting yourself into a state of love, peace and love, will also get that oxytocin going. I usually tell them, if you will book a date somewhere, and it doesn't have to be even a sexy date, it can just be a loving environment where you feel like you're being cared about, where you feel like you're being touched in a beautiful and loving way. Those are the kind of things that will set things off. Sometimes if you'll just go get an induction massage, they don't even necessarily have to hit all those meridians or pathways that induce labor. It's just about being touched. Your oxytocin will start flowing. If you are being kissed and, touched in a way that makes you feel like you are the queen bee, your oxytocin's going to get going. So same thing with after your baby's born, and you want to continue the oxytocin flow so that we decrease our risk of postpartum hemorrhage. We get that baby right up there on your chest, and you start smelling the baby. You feel the baby skin to skin. You get the baby close to the nipple. Again, the oxytocin will continue to flow. I usually say a blessing over the tree of life. I put my hand protectively on the womb, and I usually say a blessing. We thank this tree of life for all the beautiful work that it's given to our mom and to our baby. We appreciate every single thing that you've given to us, and we now release you. And then we have our tree of life. And the mom usually will have that, again, that rush in her pelvis. You can say it you can say, and I appreciate everything that you've done, and I'll allow my body to flow the oxytocin to allow the placenta to go. Of course, we call it the tree of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And those things will happen. Our mind is connected so closely to that axis that's going to allow those hormones to go. And it's just as powerful and works just as well, I think, and better sometimes than when we use artificial means like Pitocin pathways through intravenous fluids.
I absolutely swear, like, by evening primrose oil. Like, both pregnancies, I was on the dot, with evening primrose oil, and I did other things as well, like, take maca powder, which, look into it. But it was like, it's just from the health, like, just from the supermarket, you can get maca powder. I just found it boosts progesterone, like evening primrose oil does. But I was a single mom in my, and then for my second birth, I was so lucky. I probably watched a lot of romantic films, but I was so lucky that 6 weeks before my birth with my daughter, I met this wonderful lady named Chilla. She's the author of a book called Love, Learn, Live. And she just saw me and saw that I was alone and had no help and no support. And she just was like, come and be part of my family. So I was part of her family for 6 weeks until baby came, pretty much. And so although I didn't have a partner of my own, I still felt that sense of, belonging, trust and love, and they helped me so much. And, when I did feel that the labor was starting, her husband was a great masseuse and he massaged, so I still got that touch and that oxytocin flow, and I never had to feel fear. I was so lucky. And, anything that we can do in our lives to feel good like that, I think just do it. Find the people that resonate with you and just, connect and feel that sense of family.
Absolutely. So many people think that oxytocin is dependent upon sex or intercourse or, orgasm with a partner. And it really is not. It's really about the love and the connection.
Yeah.
So I love it that you had someone with you.
Yeah, I did. It was a bit of a crazy birth, that second birth. We went in there, and I'd only met her 6 weeks before, but I'd read a book, I edited it, and she had this great family. My son loved playing, with their family, and she came with me to the birth center and set up candles and crystals everywhere. And back in those days, we weren't really sure if she was allowed to come. This was 6 years ago, and so we just were like, she's my lesbian partner. So it was like, she had to be there.
There you go.
Otherwise, she wasn't, technically family or anything. So she was there and helped me, and it was just beautiful. And I wouldn't have had such a beautiful birth without her feeding me honey while I was birthing, and feeding me strawberries, and backing me up when I bossed the midwives around. I think she was like, yeah, what she said.
Yes.
Best birth partner ever. Anyway, oh my God, thank you for being with us today, Shari. It's been so beautiful, and I really, really, really would love you to come back again, and the mums hopefully can talk to you live and type in questions and ask you about stuff and how you're going. I'd like to really leave the interviews with a really general question. Is it okay with you if I just ask you something really general?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, I'll shoot you this one. How can people know what their purpose is in life?
Well, that's a huge question.
I'm calling out the inner coach. If you want to answer, you don't have to.
Sure. No, I think that's a beautiful question. I think that there's so many times when I've questioned that myself. What is it that I'm meant to be or meant to do? And my mom would say, so many times I've questioned, why me? Why this? Why now? And she'd say, for such a time as this, which is scripture. Or she'd say, you'll know when the time is right. And it would really kind of irritate me. And I'd be like, that's not fun. That's not right. What I know is that so often what we're drawn to, what keeps coming back to us, what keeps sort of showing up in our life is exactly where we should be. When I took a break from midwifery, I didn't take a break from nursing. I continued to do some other things. I started an IV PIC, as bedside IV PIC team in a tertiary care center. I did sexual assault nursing in that same tertiary care center. I ministered to people in other ways. but my heart always is midwifery. And it's not, like I said, about catching the babies. It's about being with people through their whole transition, through that whole period of time. You know, midwife means with woman.
Yes.
It doesn't mean catch a baby. It means with woman.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like God or the universe or whatever your belief system is sort of nudges us with little tiny gifts of signs, and then sometimes we just keep getting hit over the head with it.
Oh yeah.
And we have to listen, right? You're doing this beautiful mission that you're doing because of your own experience. And I know that I had so much shame and so much history behind what happened to me with my womanhood, that I needed somehow to get my redemption. I needed somehow to get that altruistic feeling for myself through something, and God provided a picture for me of midwifery. And and the people that I met throughout the ages, like Anna Mae Gaskin and some of the farm midwives and Mary Jo Brucker and the women who wrote Barney's Midwifery, and some of those people that I believe just were icons. And when I saw them and I met them, and they were just women like me, and I could see that they had their own stories. Then I saw that, God showed me all along the way with these little tiny hints, when I would run into someone and they'd say, that happened to me. Oh my, you got this gift, you've got this thing, this way about you where you can talk to people. You should use that. And I believe I shouldn't give that gift up. I should always utilize what God's given me. I want to do this for my daughter. I want to do this for my granddaughter. I want to do this for the women of the world, for whatever gender of the world needs that love and affection. So whenever you want to find your calling, I laid down face first on the floor one night and I said, God, show me, take this from me, this burden of not knowing. And, it just lined up every single time, every single way. So just trust it, trust yourself, trust your intuition, trust your dreams. And then you just keep working towards it. Whether it takes you a month, a year, 10 years, the time's going to come anyway. You might as well apply it. You might as well work towards it. And in the meantime, if you have to, my first job ever in a hospital was as a grill cook in a Catholic hospital. I was a grill cook flipping burgers. And you know what? That was one of the best, most fun jobs I ever did have.
Yeah.
You know what? It was. I did it because I needed work. I needed some money to feed my kids. And you just do what you have to do until the time comes and until the time is right for such a time as this. And then you just keep going. And now I have this doctorate in nursing practice. I have certifications. I have all this experience. But you know what? I'll do what it takes sometimes, anytime, in order to minister to those people who need it. Because I love my job. I love what I do.
It's a beautiful, I'm crying, it's like my eyes are starting, because you're a warrior. You're a real warrior. You're a birth warrior. And if there's anything that learning to birth, us as me or community, we can do to support you, reach out. We are so there. It's a beautiful vision that you have, and just want to be there with you, supporting you every step of the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Right back at you, for sure. Yes.
All right.
Way to Colorado.
Thank you so much for joining us, Shari. Everyone, follow Shari. Visit Shari's website.
Peace, love, and Shari.
Peace, love, and Shari. Thank you for watching, and we're going to see you again soon at another webinar. Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.